I do, my daughter
Chair Baumgartner.
get a copy. Yeah.
I grew up with Chair Baumgartner. In Bergen County.
Chair Baumgartner, I'm sending you a prompt to promote to a panelist. Can you please accept?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you and see you.
I can't see.
Also, just,
Will I be able to see you?
yes.
Okay. Oh, great. Thanks.
You're welcome. And just a reminder.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, if you can announce
Yes.
at the start of the meeting that we're going to be doing a switch for chairing, that would be
Yes,
great.
I have that in my notes. Yep, I'm ready. Whenever you tell me when.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, Chair Baumgartner, we're ready to get started whenever you are.
Okay. Before we call the meeting to order, I would like to announce that Kristen Kiefer will be the vice chair, will be leading the meeting today as I am remote in New Jersey. Thank you, Kristen, for doing this. So she'll take it from here.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to the August 30th, 2023 special meeting of the Art and Public Places Committee. The recording secretary will now take roll.
Committee member Asadarian. Committee member Nathanson. Committee member Puentes is absent but should be here shortly. Committee member Faulkner. Present. Vice Chair Kiefer.
Present.
Chair Baumgartner.
Present.
Let the record reflect that all committee members are present with the exception of committee member Puentes. And I forgot, also committee member Stewart is absent.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 3.1, annual work plan discussion, part 2. This is continued from the August 7th meeting. Staff to continue the discussion about the annual work plan process for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to present to you today, Tara Thompson, Arts and Culture Manager. This is an item that was on the August 7th agenda and continued to today. This is a discussion about our annual plan and our annual planning process. And following this item, there will be a second item, which is the actual proposed annual plan for the committee to consider approving today. But to start out with, we will review what our annual planning process looks like, where we are at in that process, what kind of questions we consider during this process. And then we will look at kind of our accomplishments for this year, how far we have gotten in implementing our current strategic plan and what was a part of our annual plan for this year, and then review our work areas and responsibilities. So the strategic planning process, I think, really does involve review of the things I just mentioned that we'll be doing today, and then kind of an iterative process where we look at a variety of new opportunities, continuing projects, what's going on with our strategic plan, what has changed, and are there new opportunities? And that helps us get to where we will be for the next item when we look at a proposed annual plan for this year. And just to remind everyone that we do a fiscal year here with the City of Santa Rosa, so that would be That's not quite right. It's actually July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024 is our fiscal year. So this is information that was shared at the June meeting, but I thought I would share it again since not all committee members were present at that meeting. And that was such a long time ago since we didn't have a meeting in July. So to refresh our memories and to review together, this is what we accomplished in our last fiscal year, which ended this past June 30th, 2023. We installed the Unum sculpture by Blessing Hancock in Courthouse Square and hosted a successful dedication ceremony. We installed the mural on the 5th Street parking garage, Help Each Other Grow by the Rough Edge Collective. We launched the facade improvement program, which includes a partnership with nonprofits to provide free murals, mosaics, and other placemaking artwork to small businesses impacted by the pandemic. We had partnerships with several organizations to bring free public exhibits to the Finley Community Center and the Person Senior Wing. Some of those are listed here. We hosted the 2022 Live at Juilliard concert series, which includes 6 free public concerts in Juilliard Park, attended by about 500 people each week. Surround, which is a partnership with Creative Sonoma to provide grants to 7 local artists or artist teams to produce temporary public art installations throughout Santa Rosa. We introduced a rebranded comprehensive Out There Santa Rosa website, which includes a page for the public art program, and launched a new destination marketing campaign. And we completed equity training with this committee hosted by Kimson Creative, which has included ongoing mentoring with the committee task forces. We also worked with Kimson Creative on arts engagements for the general plan update. So we worked with the Santa Rosa Forward team to come up with 3 arts engagements designed to collect input and data from a variety of youth in Santa Rosa that live in our equity priority areas or are considered equity priority populations. So many of you participated in or saw the photos from the May 21st event, Journey to the Future in Courthouse Square. That was the 3rd engagement on this list. The first engagement is a beautiful coloring book that's still being distributed throughout the community and will be collected, and the data will be analyzed. It was meant for grades 3 through 8 to gather input on health and environmental justice from the youth's point of view. And the engagement number 2 on the list there is a music video that is being released very soon. So those are our kind of program accomplishments. I think we did a lot this year, last year, I should say. And then another way to look at that, so those accomplishments kind of go hand in hand and overlap to some extent with, but also maybe separate from the progress we made on implementing our current strategic plan. So the strategic plan itself was written in a way that was a 3-year plan from 2021 to 2024. So each year we report on how much we're able to get done on that year, right, that we're working on. So what we anticipated doing last year is in the anticipated column in terms of how much funding was needed to accomplish those items. And then in the to date column is what we actually were able to accomplish in terms of spending towards those objectives. A lot of the notes there and steps taken have to do with like what direction we ended up going or how we're looking at accomplishing that. A lot of it has to do with working with Kimson Creative, adding that item to their scope of work, outsourcing to other contractors, or what the notes are for that are included there. No, so the fiscal year goes through June 30th, 2023. So this is a report on last fiscal year, how we did. And we're now 2 months into our new fiscal year already. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. I mean, yes, and it also will show that on the proposed annual work plan that there's carryover because we didn't spend all of the money this last year. Correct? Yes. Okay. This is something that we developed last year to aid in the discussion about the annual planning process, kind of a visual graphic that helps look at the work areas of the public art program and of the staff that supports the public art program. So again, this is something we worked with last year, but it really shows kind of in a visual way the public art program being one of the main components that we spend our time on as staff. And then that we also have other program areas we're responsible for, such as event permitting and the Out There Santa Rosa program. It also shows the different fund sources that support the programs in green. It shows the APPC as the committee that oversees the programs. And the red asterisks are meant to highlight like points at which there's public participation and public input is included in our process. This is kind of another way of looking at that same work area diagram, but it's a little bit more language driven. So really it helps to look at public art program responsibilities versus art and public places committee responsibilities. So it kind of is an overlay to consider what roles and responsibilities staff have to the program versus committee members on the committee. And then this is where we look at the different parts of our annual plan. Traditionally, our annual plan has included, well, at least in the last couple years, item number one is the implementation of our strategic plan. And then those are the general areas that we are working to implement. Second area would be our continuing projects, because each year we don't have neat and tidy projects that just take one fiscal year to complete. So we often have continuing projects that span multiple fiscal years. And so those usually don't need additional funds to be allocated to them, but they are continuing projects that need to be a part of the annual plan because it still is a part of what we need to accomplish. And we also have ongoing programs, meaning the programs that don't really have an end date, that they are ongoing things that the program provides for the community, like rotating art exhibits, our cultural events like Live at Juilliard, our maintenance and conservation, et cetera. And then there's always the opportunity to consider new opportunities. So that's the last item, which that should be in numeral 4, not numeral 2. But anyway, new opportunities. Another piece of the puzzle, or another important consideration in talking about our annual work plan process, is how much money there is to work with, right? So this is a summary of the last 5 years of the public art funds, revenues, expenditures, and what the fund balance then is at the end of those years. So you can see that the bulk of our revenue this last year that ended June 30th comes from private development contributions. So that's our 1% for art on private development. The city contributions are the city's assessment of its general fund capital improvement projects and park development fees. So we assess ourselves the 1% as well on those two budgets. The other income, for the last 4 years, that small $4,000-ish amount is essentially income we get from a program as a grant that we then use to run that program. So it's kind of like a pass-through. That's for the National Arts Program. We get funding from the National Arts Program Foundation to run the National Arts Program here in Santa Rosa. And then you can see our total revenue and then our expenditures. Our expenditures We knew going into the implementation of our strategic plan that we would be needing to use our fund balance or our reserves over the next few years in order to accomplish the work needed on the strategic plan. So that's why the expenditures for last year far outweigh our revenue, but it didn't mean that we were in the red. We just needed to use reserve funds. Okay, so our next steps would be to look at our proposed annual plan for this year, revise based on any feedback from the committee. This is a slide from our June meeting. So it has a date in there saying we'll have a special meeting. Well, here we are, we're having a special meeting. And then we implement that annual work plan. So the staff implements it, the work on the committee with task forces help implement it. Our consultants and partners help with implementation. So that's that presentation. And I think rather than going directly into the next item where you can look at the proposed work plan for this year, we can take public comment on this item, answer committee questions, take public comment, but there's no motion that's needed for this item. The motion that's needed would be for the next item when you're actually looking at the proposed annual work plan. So yeah, Kristen, if you want to ask for questions and then we can go to public comment.
All right, thank you, Tara, for the presentation. Are there any questions now from the committee? Since this is an item that requires a motion, since this is not an item that requires a motion, we can open discussion on this topic. Sorry, Anne, did you have a question? I didn't hear.
I just had a numbers question from that second to last slide. Why is there so much less city contribution last year than there was? I mean, it goes from like $300-some thousand to $38,000.
Yeah, the discrepancy there really is to look at it from the point of view that the 300,000 year is really the odd man out, so to speak.
Okay.
And that is because we received transfers into the Courthouse Square Public Art Program account from the Courthouse Square Reunification Project budget. So that is specifically for the Courthouse Square project. I think
Got it.
$200,000 of that is, I would have to look up the exact projects that paid in to make that year so high, but I'd be happy to do that. I know that it's related to the Courthouse Square project and maybe one other.
Yeah, that totally answers it. I just wasn't sure if we were like accelerating and then all of a sudden we're going backwards or something. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, the smaller fluctuations are just really due to each year the city's capital improvement budget fluctuates based on what projects are being done that are general fund funded. So, yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, did any committee members want to continue with the discussion about this item?
Well, I also, can you hear me if I just start talking or do I need to raise my hand on the screen?
Jeff had an item first. Let's hear from him and then we'll
Sure.
go back to you, Anne.
Perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking about like Santa Rosa and the public art plan and our role. And I'm not sure I'm exactly clear. I think in one of your one of the pages of your presentation, Tara, you were indicating public art as its relationship to Out There Santa Rosa, and it seemed to flip in terms of from one slide to another slide. I wasn't exactly sure, so maybe you could just provide a brief clarification of this public art part of Out There Santa Rosa. Is Out There Santa Rosa part of public art, or are they like what appears to be here separate entities that have some crossover?
Yeah, that last thing you said is more accurate. They are two separate programs. The history there is that Out There Santa Rosa was created out of the Economic Development Division without any involvement or crossover with the public art program. But when the public art program moved over from the Recreation and Parks Department into the Economic Development Division, there was an opportunity to look for areas of alignment and how the programs could support each other, and what kind of opportunities existed to do kind of joint co-branded kind of outreach. But they truly are very separate programs with very separate funding sources. The SRTBIA fund, that's the Santa Rosa Tourism Business Investment Area. That is, those are funds that are generated from overnight hotel stays in the city limits of Santa Rosa, and they come in to this fund. We currently have a contract with the Metro Chamber of Commerce. Their Visit Santa Rosa program receives 70% of the funds that are generated by this. And then the 30% that the city retains is used to fund a variety of things, including the Out There Santa Rosa program. But it all has to be used for marketing of Santa Rosa with the ultimate goal to encourage overnight stays.
Very good. Thank you.
Oh, interesting.
Anne, your turn.
I'm gonna, just speaking about specific slides, I was gonna refer to the one with the Venn diagram. I think we talked about something like this before, where the two circles overlap, and then there's 3 bullet points that we share in terms of priorities. That's how I read a Venn diagram. Those are the things that we both the public art program and also our committee are aligned on and work together on. I'm just putting forth a hope that we can continue to talk about making these things like project evaluation, for instance. Like, I don't have a sense of what we're doing in terms of project evaluation as a committee, or like where we have a voice in that. And even like, say, the UNUM, just how it's going forward, if we're following these projects as they go forward, and we're thinking about how they can continue to kind of invest in the community, or we can program around them, or is that just a project evaluation? Like, how did it go? And I'm not sure if we ever completely kind of totally went back to that one and all the things that happened during the project of the UNUM project as a committee. So I'm just asking, is this going to be going forward, are we going to try to tie some things into these priorities? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the 3 bullet points that are in the overlapping area of this diagram, like you said, are the kind of topics that the public art program, meaning the staff and the committee members, are both responsible for. And so project evaluation in this case does mean, how did the project go? How was the process? Were there problems? Are there process improvement needed for next time? How was the community engagement? How was it's all that.
Yeah.
So Kimson Creative started those conversations at the task force level last year. And so there still is a goal to revisit that and have a more thorough discussion about how that project went, so that we can identify areas that perhaps task forces or staff can work on developing for improvements moving forward.
Okay, great. I'm bringing this up because I feel like, I don't know if I speak for anyone else, but I'll speak for myself. I'm continuing to want to focus down where energy can go and where directions to move. I love the way you guys are laying out specifically goals and things like that. I feel like sometimes I have a lapse as to where my priority or my time or what kind of energy I can add to, and where not just the task forces, just in general. And it might be us talking about that forward too, but it's still been a little hazy about exactly where I'm best used. And so that's why I'm bringing up that this seemed like a place to start in terms of what you would want to target us at.
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of framing to consider when we hold another special meeting potentially next month in September. That was our kind of the direction that the committee gave at the last regular meeting was to call a special meeting where it could be really a singular focus on the structure of the task forces, how best task forces can be used to support the work of the strategic plan, of the program, of the committee. And so I think things like that would
Great.
be great to consider during
Okay.
that meeting.
Excellent. Yes, I didn't have that schedule going forward, so that's great. Thank you.
Tara, if you could go back to the slide with the, sorry, the bubbles, thank you. And if we could just talk about the areas with the red asterisks, that would be great reminder for me, why the website is identified, also why APPC is identified. What do these asterisks mean?
Yeah, the asterisks are meant to just kind of identify the parts of this diagram, the parts of this, of the whole program and of the work areas that have components where the public can participate. So APPC has an asterisk because our meetings are public. The public is invited to attend, to provide public comment on items on the agenda or just general comments at regular meetings. The outreach that we do, that we aim to do in terms of open houses, getting to know the work of the committee members, those are things that kind of fall under that category and what that asterisk is meant to indicate. Under projects, where it says community-led, that is really like the community is coming to us. So the public is coming to the committee for some approval or input on a project that they want to do. So that again is related to the committee, but it's also a community-led project, meaning they're not using necessarily city funding or responding to one of our calls for artists. There's also work that staff does to help community for community projects that maybe the committee doesn't see. So if a proposal isn't needed, if APPC approval isn't needed on a community project, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have some interface with them. A lot of community members reach out to us asking how they do projects. And so we're working with community through those types of interactions as well. In the strategic plan, there's a lot of engagement and outreach called for in our strategic plan. So that's what that asterisk is for there. Down under the Out There Santa Rosa program, the website for the program has a lot of ways for the public to engage, given that it's kind of a directory website. It has resources for where to find a unique restaurant in your neighborhood or an artist studio or live music in your neighborhood. So there's a lot of kind of public serving components of that website. And then the marketing and advertising related to that as well, social media, other outreach that Out There Santa Rosa does. So that's what the asterisks are for.
Thank you. All right, seeing that there are no more discussion items for this topic, I would like to now ask for public comment on this item. Recording secretary, are there any public comments on Zoom?
We don't have any participants via Zoom, but we do have a couple people attending in person. If you wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Vice Chair Kiefer, there's no public comment for this item.
Thank you. Seeing none, we will bring the item back to the committee for further discussion. Do any committee members wish to ask any additional questions or make any additional comments? All right, thank you, everyone. Again, feel free to reference back to our agenda packet for these items that were discussed, and we will keep going with our meeting. Now we will move on to the next item on the agenda, Item 3.2, the 2023-2024 Public Art Program Annual Work Plan. Staff will present a proposed work plan for the fiscal year 23-24. And our recommended action today is approval of the fiscal year 23-24 annual work plan. I'll hand it over to Tara.
Thanks, Kristen. I have printed out copies of this if that's easier for anybody to look at. I'll send a few down that way. And okay, so this is really a directly related to and should follow the last presentation. This is the proposed annual work plan for this year, which started July 1. So we're a little slow, but here we are, not too far behind. So this follows the format that I talked about in the last presentation, where item number 1 is the strategic plan implementation. So this table is the same kind of format as what was approved as our annual work plan last year. Let me try to shrink this a little bit. Hold on a second. There it is. Okay. So that's kind of small, but at least you can see the whole thing. So number 1 is the strategic plan implementation. Number 2 is our continuing projects. Number 3 are new projects. So same kind of format. And this first table is really the expenditures there are the ones that are highlighted, that kind of on the screen, it's very hard to see. It really should be kind of an orangey color, but on the screen, it looks more yellow. Those items that are highlighted yellow include rollover from this last fiscal year. So those are items where we didn't spend the full anticipated amount last year. And so there's rollover to this year. Some of those have new funds added to them this year that were called for in our implementation plan for our strategic plan. Some of them are just the rollover from last year. But each of these categories is what our strategic plan, how it kind of like carved up the work plan. So community engagement as one category, governance and administration as another category, programs and projects, and then PR and marketing. So for this next year, it's proposed that we spend almost $18,000 on community engagement and input, and those line items are pretty self-explanatory. The advisory board is one of the items called for in our strategic plan, and so the funding there is to help set that up in terms of how can we make it, how can we incentivize participation from a diverse range of the community. Building stronger relationships with community organizations, really that light item is for like meeting costs. How can we support people coming together? Can we offer things like snacks or refreshments or room rental costs for having gatherings? Increase in sustained community participation is related to that, but specifically called for in the strategic plan to be more open house type events. And then the public art toolkits is one of our other large items, and that has been added to the Kimson creative scope of work for this next year so that they can really help us get that moving. For governance and administration, it's proposed to spend almost $74,000 in that category. There is a different item with a different color. So if you have the printout, it's the green line. On the screen, it also looks kind of green, but it's hard to distinguish from the other colors. That green line, budget for ongoing program contract position, that's for Jessica's contract position. And that is the public art program share of her services for the city of Santa Rosa through a professional services contract. It's green because it wasn't necessarily called for in our strategic plan. Our strategic plan identified costs and strategies above and beyond things we were already doing. So we were already working with Jessica as a contractor. And so that's why it's green. It's not really included in the implementation plan for the strategic plan, if that makes sense. The same thing goes for the ongoing maintenance down in the next category, because those are ongoing things that we had pre-existing. So in governance and administration, those types of line items are really focused on kind of internal changes and improvements we can make related to partnerships, prioritizing transparency and accessibility, looking at our policies and procedures, making improvements there, making sure that we have the ability to fund any new public art installations that we're commissioning, outsourcing work to leverage our resources and our ongoing contract position. Then in programming and projects is a large percentage of the program budget, which I think it should be because it's actual projects. So it's commissions to artists, funds going out to artists in the community. However, it's, I think, a little high for what we actually will realistically accomplish this year, because it includes grants for arts organizations that last year the committee approved holding on to those funds as emergency response funds. So given what happened in the community after the Tubbs fire, and then again during COVID, it became really clear and then also identified in our strategic plan that the program should be able to have some funds held in reserve specifically for emergency response. So that's what that line item is referring to. So those funds, unless needed this year, would just kind of sit there and roll over, not actually be expended unless needed. The public art audit that we are working on is also part of our programs and projects. And again, that has been added to the scope of work for Kimson Creative. So we can see that coming soon. We've had a meeting with Nico, so we are making progress on that. And again, like I said, our ongoing maintenance is one of those pre-existing before the strategic plan. It's a part of our budget every year. We have a contract that's currently we'll be entering into our last year of a 3-year contract where $50,000 is allocated each year for our regular collection maintenance and cleaning of the items in our collection. And the PR and marketing, these are things where we use our existing communication tools to advertise the program, maximize our outreach. Last year, these types of line items included expenses like the pop-up tent that we now take out to events, other marketing materials. It also includes fees for consultants to design postcards for us or other marketing materials. So that is probably in excruciating detail, the strategic plan implementation and the program budget. The rest of the items down here don't have budget information because they're continuing projects, meaning the budget was allocated in previous years, and we're just continuing to work on these programs or projects. So we still have some work going on with the general plan update. We still have some of our Art Surround projects coming up. We have, again, our ongoing maintenance and conservation. However, there probably will be a request made to the committee to allocate additional funds to the ZAG project, which needs some repair, and its repairs will cost more than the annual allotment we have. So there'll be a budget request for that. The Asawa panels is also an ongoing project. However, there will probably be needing additional funding for that as well, given the latest update from the foundry that is making the bronze panels. And then our Fire Station 5 public art project, which we just launched, is a continuing project. It has a separate funding source, so no public art funds are being allocated to that. In terms of new projects, I just had a meeting yesterday to confirm that we are able to move forward with the pedestrian overcrossing project, to have public art included in that project. So I'll be bringing more information on that and an updated timeline. And to remind you, last year in our annual work plan, was last year or 2 years ago? I can't remember. In a previous work plan, the committee did approve allocating $50,000 to this project. And I received confirmation this week that the Public Works project budget can fulfill our request of adding to that budget, so that we will have a more substantial project budget. So I will bring more information to the committee on that soon. So that is the proposed annual work plan for this year. And that would take us through June 30th, 2024. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And the request today is for you to approve this annual work plan unless there are concerns or changes that are requested by the committee.
Thank you, Tara, for the presentation. Are there any questions from the committee at this time? Again, this is questions only, please. We will have the opportunity for discussion later. Go for it, Lisa.
Oh, it's not, there we go. Yes, I have a question. Under programs and projects, the public art audit from Kimson Creative, that's for $50K. And I know that is in the yellow, so it includes carryover. Will we get more of a detailed breakdown of that audit?
Yeah, for sure. Right now, the work to date on that has just been kind of administrative staff work. And so given that it is a large scale project that will require a lot of data collection and analysis, reporting, as well as community engagement to get folks to interact with the tool we developed, which, if you recall, is a we're essentially doing an inventory of all public art in Santa Rosa through a crowdsourcing GIS website. So in order to get people to use it, we have to launch a pretty extensive campaign to tell people what we want them to do. So given Kimson's great experience in that area, we wanted their help on that project. So right now, I think we're at the stage where we've gone over the scope of work with Nico. He's developing a detailed breakdown of what that scope of work looks like with budget information. And then we'll be able to share that with the committee. I believe that the way that the strategic plan broke down the expenditures for that project was like $25,000 spread over 2 years. So the 50,000 is the full amount that we anticipated that costing. And like I said, because now we know we're going to be working with Kimson Creative on that, we should be able to develop a much clearer picture of what that scope of work is and bring it to you.
Okay, so this amount is it's allocated funds for the proposal from Kimson Creative that.
Yeah, it's actually, so we solicited their help to complete this project. So essentially, we already had a contract with Kimson for the other projects he's been working on. We approached him with the idea of adding this to the scope of work. And so currently he's developing exactly what that kind of product would be that we will be getting from him.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Do we have a breakdown of the arts organizations that are receiving funding through the committee?
We currently don't have arts organizations that are receiving funding.
Oh, we don't. Oh, I was looking at that $100,000 line item. But
Yeah, so that is being held for emergency response. No funds have been sent out for that. If there's some emergency in the community that the public art programs can support artists and through grants to arts organizations, that's how those funds would be used, but that hasn't happened yet. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the implementation plan, and unless I'm missing something there, I don't see any new actual public art projects being funded within that budget. But I do see in continuing projects, for example, the Asawa panels will need additional funding, but it doesn't say separate funding source like Fire Station 5. So I'm just wondering if there's more clarification on what is going to be funded and what we should expect to see actually implemented and completed.
Yes,
And
good.
this
It's a good
year.
question. Yeah, the current proposed annual work plan does not include initiating any brand new projects, given we already have several that were already initiated but haven't really started. So we have a lot on our plate. The Asawa panels were allocated $300,000 of one-time PG&E settlement funds from the council. So we have outside funds for that were identified 2 years ago, year and a half ago. Where we're at with the project now is that additional funds may be needed given the complexity of installing the bronze on the fountain that the contractor wasn't aware of when they initially bid for the project. So that's something that, again, we can bring more information to the committee on to consider if there's the ability for any future public art funds to go towards that. But it has funds associated with it. It's not like we're starting from scratch with that. That project is underway. There just may need to be additional public art funds allocated. So the Asawa panels will be happening. That will be a project that will be happening. We don't have a timeline for its installation. Right now, we're waiting for the fountain contractor to come to let us know what their timeline is for constructing the actual fountain. Then we can come up with a timeline for installing the panels on the fountain. The Fire Station 5 is also already in process and has a separate budget from the fire department's kind of project budget itself. So that will require our project management over that project, and there will be new public art installed by next summer on the new fire station. And then the Highway 101 pedestrian overcrossing, now that we know that that's moving forward, we're developing a timeline for what that looks like. And I think that by the end of 2025 is when we'll see public art installed on that project. So projects often have, like I said earlier, like a multi-year timeline. So even though funds aren't necessarily allocated this year for anything brand new, there's still a lot of public art that will be forthcoming that is already in the works.
Will we get a full list of all projects that are underway this year and into the next year?
Yeah, I mean, this is it, but we can provide you with that in a different format if that's desired. I mean, we try to give updates every meeting on ongoing projects and programs. So the information is there, but if there's a specific format you'd like to see that in, I'm happy to provide
Not
that.
so much format, but this came up in another meeting last week about the street mural project by Judy Kennedy for the historic recognition of Chinatown. And I think there's some other projects that kind of fall into that category. They were funded through, I think, a $2,500.
Yeah, those were
grant.
not funded by the public art program though. So those were community improvement grants from the Community Advisory Board. And they did come, many of them came before this committee for approval for the artwork design.
Right.
But they are not considered our projects. We don't have control over their timeline or whether or not they happen or not.
Because they came through this committee for artwork design approval, is it possible to be provided with a report on updates, just so we can kind of keep tabs on what's out there that we might have even
Seen
for-
come
yeah,
through? Yeah, I can attempt to do that. I have to say that the Community Advisory Board right now is kind of in a state of reorganization, given the fact that there's no longer an Office of Community Engagement at the city. So it now is housed under the Communications Department. So there may be some missing pieces of information, but I can do my best at getting an update from from the board and from the new staff that helps that board to see if they keep records on which projects they actually funded. Some projects don't ever happen. So it's a by reimbursement type of grant program. So I know that sometimes there's just never any movement that the artist or the community member is able to make on a project and they fall through. So, but I can try to gather that information. I can't promise that it will be
Not high priority, but
cohesive.
definitely a curiosity.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Did you have a question, Nan?
I do, yeah, thanks. Given that the Kimson Creative is about a quarter of the budget you threw down there on the $317,000, he comes up to about 85,000, not counting, I know some of it's rolled over, some of it's new, just a bit of it's new in terms of where the funding is coming from, but it still is a chunk of money that we're throwing down and paying to them. You mentioned that they are leveraging resources. Is it a team of Nico? Is it just Nico? Like, kind of like, could you give us a little bit more about your engagement with him and what you're handing off to him, just in the terms of the large amount of money that we're paying?
Yeah, of course. So Nico is the principal of Kimson
Yeah.
Creative, which is the creative our arts and equity consulting firm that we've been working with over the last year or so now, year and a half, I think. And so he works with a variety of consultants as a part of his organization. Kevin is the main one that the committee has also worked with, Kevin Becerra. But he's got a team of people for the arts engagements for the general plan update project. He brought in, he through his organization, he hires and sources all of the artists, the graphic designers, the production team to do a music video. He's the one that brings all those people in and are paid through his contract. So it's not just him. It's not, it's a much larger team and scope of work that falls in that, under that umbrella. And the types of projects, again, that we have assigned to him at this point through his current contract are the toolkits and the audit, and then continuing work with task forces once we have a clear direction for the task forces. So that's what that all, those are the main topics under his scope of services. And like I said, we're in that process right now of developing really clear work plans for each of those items so that I can bring that back to the committee.
Great, that's super helpful. I think that's just good it's good to kind of remember, since we've seen them in different phases and interacted with them at different times, and not everyone, like Double and other folks, have worked with them yet. So that's good. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. I will now ask for public comment on this item and then move on to committee discussion. Recording secretary, are there any public comments on Zoom?
Vice Chair Kiefer, there are still no attendees via Zoom. If you're attending in person and wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Vice Chair Kiefer, I'm seeing no hands raised.
Great, thank you. Seeing none, we will move on to discussion. And this is now time for us to have any discussion about specifics to the expenditure. Oh, sorry. In order for the committee to start a discussion, a motion must be made first. Does anyone wish to make a recommended motion to approve fiscal year 23-24 annual work plan?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Now that we have a motion on the table, we can discuss the item. Would anyone like to start?
It looks like a reasonable plan, and it seems to be in line with what we have discussed about the work plan and our strategic plan previously. So I don't see where we can really recommend or have any changes to this plan that would be of substantial nature. So I'm inclined to vote for this plan, having made the motion.
Could we just speak briefly to the marketing strategy?
Yeah, what, do you have a specific question or?
Is this under the purview of the Kim's In Creative?
No, not currently. We had started a discussion with the consultant that is helping us with the Out There Santa Rosa website on including a public art program strategy within that. And then I think it became a little bit, I don't know, ambiguous as to, okay, is it a Out There Santa Rosa strategy or is it a public art program strategy? So, so we need clarity on that, and it may be a discussion with the committee that can help steer that. It may be kind of more input or perspective from our consultant, and it may be that we need a different consultant to do that work for us.
Is there the potential, would that happen? Would there be an RFP that went out to solicit
Correct.
proposals for that? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks.
It depends, actually, I should say, it depends on the dollar amount. There's certain requirements for certain amounts, dollar amounts of a contract or for services. So we may not have to necessarily go out to bid, but I think it would be nice to get several options and invite the community to participate. Yeah.
Tara, I think you just identified where my question.
Yes, I
was
totally
prompted,
understand.
between
Yeah.
Out There,
Yeah.
Santa Rosa and Public Art program. So I would like to just, I guess, underscore the request that this committee really be engaged in what that public relations and marketing strategy is.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, it on paper, it's clear they're two separate programs, but because there's room for collaboration and overlap and kind of, yeah, how do we incorporate each one into the other? It gets messy.
Mhm.
You get to, well, okay, well, whose voice is speaking through, you know, when the community sees it. And I still feel strongly that there should be a clear identity for the public art program. And I think we have that, but how we're speaking to people, what people see when we put out news about the program or invite people to participate, I think that needs to be developed much further.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a question for, regards to the grants for art organization, the hold for emergency response funds, the hold on that. I know we've discussed this a few times before, but if I can just get some, a little more information regarding the hold and what, is this for the emergency response funds from prior emergencies or anticipation of any future?
Yeah,
Emergencies.
anticipation for future.
Okay.
Yeah, so there were conversations with the, throughout the strategic planning process with the committee, with our steering committee, with stakeholders that really identified the need to have a specific reserve fund for uses in emergencies. So not just that, yes, we might have funds in reserves, but the steps it takes to allocate the funds for use make it too slow to be able to respond in an emergency. So it was recommended through our process that we actually put it in our work plan, that there's a line item for this so that funds can get out to folks faster when they need it.
Okay, I do remember that conversation. My other question on that, so if those funds do not get used
Mhm.
in that fiscal year, what happens to those funds? Does it just continue growing, or can those funds be used actually for that year for other projects?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that the committee should come up with a kind of a strategy or a procedure for that. Right now, that this includes $50,000 from 2 years being combined, right? So last year, we didn't need it, we didn't use it, and then we're adding 50,000 for this year. Hopefully, we don't need it. Hopefully, we never use these funds, let's put it that way, for this purpose. But our strategic plan, the expenditure plan that accompanied the actual plan ends after this fiscal year. So there's no more like implementation plan set out for us. That doesn't mean that it stops. There's still a lot of work to be done and it will continue. But I think that there should be some planning meetings that the committee holds to start looking forward to what happens in July 1 of 2024. What of this will be carrying forward? How much of this won't be needed? What happens to those funds if they were earmarked for a specific purpose and they're not needed? Do we hold them indefinitely? I think that the intention for the grants for organizations was to have something that just kind of sits there indefinitely in case of emergency, whether that gets added to over the years or then somehow dipped into over the years, like those types of policies, I think the committee should have input on.
Okay, so we just need to add that to the task list on the leftover funds of what
Right.
our policies and then our procedures that we want to take
Mhm.
with us for the future.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Tara.
But no funds, the Public Art Fund is a separate fund set up in the city's structure. So our funds roll over year to year. If they're not used
Correct.
in a specific project, they just kind of roll back into our reserve balance. And so the funds are there and available, but like I said, to appropriate the funds for specific use, there's several steps that have to happen. And so that's why having a line item there is helpful.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Just as a point of clarification, what kind of emergencies?
Yeah, so after the Tubbs fire, there was a lot of work done amongst community arts organizations to come together, to support one another, to offer spaces, healing workshops, art supplies for people who lost everything. There was a lot of work done just kind of organically, but not a lot of resources available. So that's one kind of experience, past experience that I think was on people's minds when we had the discussion about being able to support artists through arts organizations in the aftermath of an emergency or some kind of disaster. But then also through COVID, there was a whole other layer of considerations, like we ended up doing the emergency response grant for musicians using Live at Juilliard funds, because Live at Juilliard couldn't take place 2 years in a row because of COVID. So we were able to use the funds that were set aside for Live at Juilliard to give emergency grants out to musicians during that time. So things like that are examples of, I think, what was discussed when this was put in our work plan.
And so at this particular time, is there some set of protocols or portal or some kind of infrastructure that
No.
allows us to-
No, because the process would be, we don't know what they might need to be used for, other than to go towards arts organizations. So it's like, we have talked about setting up a grant program for arts organizations that's not related to emergency response. That's still something that we can do in the future. But the intention here would be that, hopefully this never happens, but say there was another large disaster in the community, there could be a call for, there could be a grant application opened to arts organizations, really immediately after, that just lets arts organizations apply for funding. We would just have to come up with, and the committee would be involved with deciding, just like we do for any project, we would create a project plan. There would be criteria and all of that. So I just don't, if the committee if the direction from the committee is that we should start on that now to set us up for being more able to respond quickly in the future, that I think that's wise. I think that a lot of the details though may not be known given what is actually needed at that time. But that doesn't mean that we can't at least, we know that it would have to go to arts organizations doing work in Santa Rosa because we're the Santa Rosa Public Art Program, right? So there's certain kind of like eligibility things we probably could put down on paper. Other than that, it may be kind of a unknown to be determined kind of thing.
For my information, was grants for art organizations, did that have any crossover with the Open and Out program with Santa Rosa? Was that, just reminding myself how that was layered into our understanding of our strategic plan?
Yeah, thank you. That was, I'm sure, a good example of how funds are needed in creative ways that we didn't anticipate, given current events. But that specific, the funds that the public art program helped, the funding that the public art program provided to the Open and Out program wasn't through a line item like this. It wasn't for grants for arts organizations, for emergency response. It was in the 2020 annual plan that we had that year. The committee had approved a line item for temporary public art projects, but we hadn't started a call for artists yet. We hadn't initiated the project yet. And so when the response was needed to respond to COVID, we came to the committee and we asked, we see a good use of these funds being to support this Open and Out program and get artists to create temporary artwork for downtown during this road closure program, and the committee approved that. So that's how those funds were used for that program.
And so going forward, we don't have a line item like the temporary arts project funding like we had previously.
No, so every year we've traditionally had funding allocated in the annual plan for some new project. We don't have any this year because we have so many continuing projects. We cannot take on any more projects. But that is missing, as someone else brought up, Jeff brought up, that that is not included in this plan. Usually at this point in our process, it's just a line item that says, new public art program to be determined. Yeah, it doesn't say what it is. But that is not included in this annual work plan because we have so many other projects that had already been started.
Thank you for clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan?
Yeah, I'm just out of curiosity, is there a timeline that's attached to the public art toolkits or any of the other deliverables from Kimzin?
Yeah, that's what we're currently working on with him. Right now, I believe his contract goes through I think we extended his contract for 1 year, so meaning till next June 30th. But when he provides us with the full proposal for each of the items that are a part of his scope of work, there will be timelines associated with them. And if any of them go beyond the end of his current contract, we would need to come up with a plan to either change those or to we can attempt to extend his contract, of course, but that's at that point we would decide how to adjust that.
I guess I asked because it seems like that maybe opens up an opportunity for more informal kinds of public art engagement, outside of the funding that we're not allocating for more formal projects. And I think that could be exciting.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that they will be bringing us some really exciting ideas for how to engage folks in the audit as well as the toolkits.
So it makes me think about what the strategic planning process timeline will be, knowing that the current plan will wrap up in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I think we will be bringing an item to the committee sometime before the end of this fiscal year. That is kind of a overarching review of the whole plan. And since it was dated with a 2021 to 2024 strategic plan, the intention of most strategic plans, and especially with the consultants that we use, Third Plateau, they're like, if you're not reviewing this annually and making changes to it and changing dates and doing this and that, then you're not really using this plan like we intended you to. So I feel like we have the opportunity sometime this year to really look at the plan in its entirety, how we've been looking at how we've been implementing it each year, but we haven't really looked at the whole plan again. I think we have the opportunity to do that this year, and then potentially extend its date range, right? Like how many more years do we want to be implementing this plan? Or are there things in this plan that are like, no, these aren't just the plan. These are concrete program things that we want to build into our program. So I think that kind of discussion needs to happen so that we don't just have something that's then expired and sitting on a shelf. So it should be a living document.
So that could be a potential to add to our future agenda items. That would.
Yeah, I have several items from our discussion today that are will definitely be items that'll come back to the committee. Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is relevant, but could we maybe briefly revisit the discussion that we had with the, planning department about the general plan stuff? Is there anything to touch on
Yeah,
there?
they actually requested to come and present to the committee. We're just working on finding a good date for them to do that. They are wrapping up their community engagement in the next couple of weeks though. So there may be a request to have another special meeting sooner rather than later, but they are interested. They're trying to get as much feedback before they take the item to the planning commission, which is I think the second week of September. So it is coming up quickly. So I will let the committee know if they have dates that we want to try to gather for, and then they can present the draft plan and where they're at in the process.
Just noticing the time and hoping that we have enough time during this meeting to really talk about the task forces. So
That is not on the agenda for today. In terms of a large discussion, we'll be calling a separate special meeting for that full discussion. Today, the task force item on the agenda is just the regular updates or report outs, I should say, if there are any.
got it.
Not a
Okay, thank you.
discussion. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
So at this time, after this discussion we've had, there is a motion on the table to approve the fiscal year 23-24 annual work plan. If there is no further discussion, I would like to call a vote in order to keep with our timeliness. Is that okay with everyone? Great. Recording secretary, can you please record the vote?
Committee Member Asdarian? Committee Member Faulkner? Can you speak? Can you turn your microphone on and speak into it? Committee Member Nathanson?
Aye.
Committee Member Puentes?
Aye.
Vice Chair Kiefer?
Aye.
Chair Baumgartner?
Aye.
So that was moved by Committee Member Nathanson, seconded by Chair Baumgartner, and this motion passed with 6 ayes and 1 absent, with Committee Member Stewart being absent.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And I look forward to future conversations that are based on our conversation today. I would like to move to item 3.3, program and project updates. This is a continuation from the August 7th meeting of the Art in Public Places. Staff will present updates on current programs and projects. And remember, this action item is information only.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to turn it over to Jessica. She'll provide our program and project updates today.
Okay, I've got a little list here. We just wrapped up our 28th annual Live at Juilliard concert series last week. We got really great feedback at pretty much every single concert. It was a great lineup. Staff Also worked with the Recreation and Park staff on the Handmade Holiday Crafts Fair last month. We did the jury panel and reviewed 170 craft fair applications. And we also worked with their staff to help them update their considerations and to help them figure out how to include a junior section in the upcoming crafts fair. For our rotating exhibits, we've got 2 shows up, one at Finley and one at the Person Senior Wing. At Finley right now is the Pointless Sisters show. That's about 20 quilters that are all showing together. And at the Person Senior Wing, there's the Santa Rosa Photographic Society. Both of those shows are up almost until the end of September. And then at the end of September, staff is going to work with the POMO project and the California Indian Museum and Cultural Center. They're going to install around the same time at the end of September and hold a joint reception on October 6th. I'll send out a reminder invite to you all. That's going to coincide with POMO Honoring Month and also include POMO dancers. So it should be a big, great reception. For our Arts Around program, we just had last week, Julian Bellotti and Anna Wiziarde held a reception at City Hall to celebrate their piece there. We also installed a piece at City Hall with Barbie Watts. She did a water catchment sculpture, and that's going to be up for another month. That's in front of City Hall around kind of like facing First Street. We also hope to do one more installation in September with Kristen Shroop. She's doing a walking tour through Santa Rosa with decals. And once we get those installed, she's also trying to schedule a reception at the library to give a talk with everyone that she's representing in her decals. So I'll let you know about that date too. For the facade improvement program, staff is still working with economic development on the placemaking projects. We're coordinating with Art Start and the mural project to bring artwork to 20 local businesses are on the list right now. And we actually just completed the first one. I'll send out a flyer down the way. The first one was installed by Art Start at Cafe Frida. And they're holding a little small reception from 6 to 6:30 this Friday, and you're all invited. Finally, the Fire Station 5 art project is underway after APPC approved the project plan and RFQ on the 7th. Staff published the RFQ on the 11th, and we currently have 10 submissions. The call closes on September 11th, so we're going to try to get that out a bit more. And that's it.
Thank you, Jessica.
Mhm.
Is there any other update other than what you provided about the Asawa fountain for waiting on information?
Yeah, I don't have any more updates about that right now. Like I said earlier, we're just waiting on a timeline from the fountain contractor. And then we will develop a timeline for installing the panels.
And would that be coordinated through you? Okay.
The panel part, yes. The
Yes.
fountain, no. Yeah.
The fountain, remind us what, is that capital improvement project?
No, that's Hugh Food Trail Corporation. They received private donations to build the fountain. And so the Hugh Food Trails Corporation construction company will be the contractor. I believe they submitted plans to the city, but I don't know where they're at in getting them approved and or a timeline. I know that all of their resources were on one of their other projects until it's finished, and I don't think it's quite wrapped up yet. So I think that as far as I understand, they're waiting for that project to be wrapped up before they can switch over to this project.
Thank you.
Kristen, I have just a quick thing to add.
One moment.
Okay.
We will ask for public comments and then committee members will have a chance to ask questions. Are there any public comments on Zoom?
Still no attendees via Zoom. We do have a couple in person. If you wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand. No hands are raised at this time, Vice Chair Kiefer.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions and or updates from the committee?
Yeah, yes. regarding the facade improvement program, which I'm glad to hear a report on, Jessica. Thank you. The Museum of Sonoma County was just recently approved for a facade improvement grant, which will help support murals on the outside of the building, but also banners and some other signage to help the public find the location and to beautify the facade. So I wanted to express thanks on behalf of the museum for that program, and also ask if there's other organizations or public buildings in Santa Rosa that would be worth mentioning at this point that are being supported by that very useful grant program, which we appreciate.
Yeah, there are about 40 businesses receiving the facade grant, and about half of those are getting a placemaking project. So I don't know if there'd be one particular one I'd want to call out, but
Yeah,
it's pretty
but
robust.
That's a significant number.
Yeah,
That's
it really
good to
is.
know.
We can provide a fuller update at a future meeting on all the sites that are getting those projects. We don't have that in front of us today.
Thank you.
What, can I say something?
Yes, Anne.
I just want to highlight what a great job you're doing on this and keeping us informed. But Jessica, the management of a lot of these projects, I know you do them together, you and Tara, but it's been really fun to watch them roll out, and just kind of different places I've bumped into people that are involved or received notices of receptions. And I just love the way we come around and give everyone the full treatment and the full moment and chance to interface with the public and what they're doing and have people know. And it's really nicely done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We will move on to the next item on the agenda. Number 4, committee member reports. This has also been continued from the August 7th meeting. Committee members are welcome to make general comments and/or announcements at this time. All right. And we have also time for ad hoc task force reports and discussion. Each task force has the opportunity to provide updates. We may not need to provide updates today since we had a discussion earlier on the agenda. However, would anyone like to share? Please announce your task force and the members.
Community engagement does not have a report at this time.
Yeah, and Ann and I do not have a report. And then we were also wondering when we have our next meeting, since we do have a couple new members, if things are, partnerships are going to change and people in different departments, and what, I know this probably is a discussion for the next one. And but we are excited and can't wait for our next meeting and see what our game plan is.
The project development task force is in the same boat.
Just briefly, I don't even know if this is something we can answer, but is there the possibility of attaching some kind of minimal funding structure to the ad hoc task force so that we might, think about realizing some projects as a way to help sort of motivate the process of getting things organized?
Yeah, for sure. I think that can be a part of the discussion next time. I don't think that it was ever intended that there wouldn't be funds to support the work of the task forces. It just is kind of allocated in its own category in our work plan, right? So instead of saying task forces, it says community engagement, right? Do you know what I mean? So, but yes, let's bring that up as a part of the discussion.
Great. We will now ask for public comments. Are there any public comments on Zoom or in person?
Still no attendees via Zoom. If you wish to make a public comment and are attending in person, please raise your hand. I'm seeing no hands raised.
Great, thank you. All right, item 5, we have department reports. This time is reserved for city staff to provide a briefing on issues of interest. No action will be taken on these matters except to possibly place a particular item on a future agenda for consideration. Tara, do you have any department reports?
I just have one very brief kind of FYI that I was notified yesterday that it looks like the clerk's office is reinstating its annual boards and commissions luncheon to thank all members of city boards, commissions, and committees. So it is tentatively scheduled for October 17th from noon to 2. Please keep that on your radar. When that date gets solidified, I'm sure you will get an announcement and an invitation. I just wanted you to know that that is coming up and that it's exciting that they are starting that program again.
Great, thank you. Item 6, future agenda items. This is time reserved for discussion about whether to place matters on future agenda for possible action. The ongoing list is included on the agenda. Do any committee members wish to add items or to make a motion to include one of these items on a future agenda?
And I just want to say that there were several items that came out of our discussion earlier that are already on my radar to make sure we're addressing, so no need to add those to the list.
Great, I look forward to seeing those items. That was a good conversation we had previously, and I would like to see them back. All right. Item number 7, I will move to adjournment. The next regular meeting of the Art and Public Places Committee, scheduled for Monday, September 4th, will be canceled due to the Labor Day holiday. A special meeting may be called prior to the next regular meeting, scheduled on Monday, October 2nd, 2023. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for participating remotely, Anne.
You're welcome. Good to see y'all. I'll be.
Good to see ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.